Get ready to reimagine the future of humanity and unlock your true potential. Welcome to Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, hosted by Dr. David Gruder, an internationally renowned integrative psychologist, human potential expert, author, and social change catalyst, as he delves into the most urgent issues of our time. With the world facing unprecedented challenges and social and political divides growing deeper, it's time to take action. Each episode of this groundbreaking series will empower you with invaluable insights, strategies, and tools to heal these divisions and restore personal freedom and societal well-being. Whether you're a concerned citizen, a courageous leader, an influential figure, or an ambitious entrepreneur, Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours will guide you on a transformative journey. Discover your unique role in creating a brighter future for yourself and society at large. Dr. David Gruder will draw upon his extensive knowledge and experience to provide practical solutions for shaping the world we live in. With his passionate exploration of social change, he will help you navigate through the complexities of our time and inspire you to make a meaningful impact. So, prepare yourself for an eye-opening experience as we delve deep into the heart of the matter. Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours will challenge your perspectives, ignite your imagination, and equip you with the tools you need to reimagine and redefine the world around you. The time to transform our future is now. Join us on this incredible journey and enter a new era of possibility. For more information on Dr. David Gruder and the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, visit www.rhfy.ca. Welcome to Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, where together, we create a brighter tomorrow. Now, here is the host of Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, Dr. David Gruder.
Welcome back to the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. I'm your host, Dr. David Gruder, the polymath of human potential and societal psychotherapist who equips leading-edge leaders and influencers and you with transcendent ideals, values, principles, mindsets, and skills for co-creating humanity's most spiritually elevated future for generations to come. The title of this episode is Reimagining Social Entrepreneurship, Aligning Values with Profits to Help People Thrive. Work clashing with your values? Re-envisioned social entrepreneurships, the fix. Learn how 50 years of refinement has matured this field so it turns higher purpose into bigger profits. Uncover ways to boost fulfillment, elevate impact, and grow your bottom line all together. Solve your stress and forge a thriving future by turning gridlock into genius. Stay right here. Now, forging purpose into profits is this episode's guest, Paul Zelizer, a pioneer who's equipped over 30,000 leaders in social entrepreneurship since 1993. Paul's a true beacon for values-driven success. As one of the first business coaches to champion social entrepreneurs, he mainly works with sustainability pioneers and clean tech founders. He also hosts the Awarepreneurs Podcast, which is the world's longest-running entrepreneur show. Paul joins us to reveal social entrepreneurship's best future, tackling the work values crisis with actionable insights that dissolve stress. Buckle up for a true masterclass on blending purpose and profit. Welcome to Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, Paul.
Thanks so much for having me, David. It's a real honor to be here.
Oh, well, it's an honor to have you. And, you know, in this first segment, we'll look at the problems people commonly have with remaining passionately engaged at work and how that ties to social entrepreneurship. But before we delve into that in this segment, first, say a little bit, just briefly, about how you first got interested in social entrepreneurship in the first place.
It's a great question, David. And like many other people, I'm wired to want to make a difference. It seems to be baked into my nervous system. Some of that's cultural. Come from a progressive Jewish line, and some of that's just how I'm personally wired. And I started off in community mental health, was an innovator. So before I knew it, I had to figure out how to get the funding to do these innovation programs, whether it was engaging young men as fathers or restorative justice. And suddenly I was running a nonprofit because we had to figure out how to fund it. And the process of both working in communities that had a lot of challenges as well as a lot of strengths, plus trying to keep it funded and keep that all moving, it was just a recipe for burnout. And 15 years into that career, I burned out. And in 2008, I was like, there's got to be a way to keep doing work that has impact, but also has a much healthier relationship in terms of my well-being to how I make my living. And that has been the focus of my journey for 18 years now.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And what I want to underscore in what you were saying is something that I have found is universal among those who are truly dedicated to having positive impact in the world and who have clarity about what their role in doing that is that almost to a person, they tend to be self-neglectful and they tend to neglect their cherished relationships too, because they end up making their higher purpose more important than their own well-being and their relationships.
Guilty as charged, David.
And so am I. So was I. I had to do a big shift around that myself. So anyway, in this episode's next segment, we'll get into root causes of symptoms that we'll cover during this first segment. So in order to kick this off, what are the most common challenges you've discovered that entrepreneurs and their teams are running into these days around team member disengagement, even those who are aspiring socialpreneurs?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. So there's what's happening in the general entrepreneur space, like all entrepreneurs are facing, and then there's some specific challenges that social entrepreneurs are facing. So let's start at the wider funnel and then get into some of the specifics of those who are looking for impact to be baked into the actual.
Beautiful.
So, 2025, we're in the midst of global uncertainty in terms of the economy. We know that getting funding is harder if you're in a startup phase. Haven't seen any data in 2025 yet, but in 2024, we saw 38% less investment going into new startups than in 2023. And in 2025, the general consensus is we're down from 2024. So if you go back 2 years, it was probably more than 50% total funding available to new, that's a major, major, major difference. So there's funding challenges. The economy there's just a great deal of uncertainty with what's happening in the global trade war and things like that. So people are very nervous. I just heard a report that consumers are putting off big purchases, whether that's houses or cars or even getting married, let alone buying your meditation app or some, social entrepreneur product. Just people are very, very cautious right now because there's so much uncertainty, and all entrepreneurs of all persuasions, no matter how impact or non-impact oriented, are facing. We're also seeing a disengagement crisis in the workplace. People are feeling like they want to have what they're doing matter, but they're not feeling that in a lot of workplaces. And they're also not feeling very supported. There's a lot of disconnect between frontline workers and leaders in companies and different stressors for each, but neither one is feeling very happy with the other. So those are just across the market in almost all sectors, trends that we're seeing. Then when you
I'm finding that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you add, I want to make a difference to the equation, right? And it gets even more on the surface complex. It can feel like it's making it harder. I actually think, and we'll talk about this in the next segment, that can help you get traction and navigate these uncertain times. But in terms of the average person's experience in this moment, you're intelligent, you're thoughtful, the people who listen to this show, David, and you're trying to navigate, gosh, life is expensive. Goodness, I might not feel like I am getting the most respect or having the most impact. And that's all feeling very overwhelming. I'm hearing that over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And like you, I'm hearing that as well. And I want to underscore in what you just said, something in specific, which is the paradox that with socialpreneurs who want to make a difference, the trap is the belief that wanting to make a difference is going to make succeeding even harder. Paradoxically, when one knows how to do that well, it actually makes succeeding easier. And we'll get into that, as you said, in some of the upcoming segments in this episode.
The
So
secret sauce is coming. Yes.
yes, and so I just wanted to underscore that paradox. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, David. Yeah. And I think it can help navigate these things, but it takes a little bit of key intentionality. And also, I'm a huge fan. I say to my clients all the time, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's learn from what's already working out there. Not that we can take something that worked in India or Africa and apply it. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, just cookie cutter, but let's at least be willing to learn and not assume because I'm an innovator that nobody's ever thought of anything like what I've thought about. And then I go and reinvent the wheel and don't give myself the benefit of learning from people who've innovated before and figured out some strategies that might be applicable to my situation.
That's a really great symptom for us to underscore as well, that that people who are innovators, socialpreneurs, entrepreneurs, anyone who's in the creative or innovative space, in order to do the innovation, there's a certain amount of isolation that's needed, positive isolation, where I need to go deep inside in order to activate my creative juices and
Yes.
become a good conduit of
Yes.
higher love and wisdom and all of that. And so that inward turning is built into the creative innovation process, and the trap that accompanies it that you're pointing out that's really important is that innovators often get so enthralled with what they're bringing through that they are at risk of falling into the trap of believing that they're the first to ever come up with whatever's coming through them.
You might call that the innovator's paradox, right?
It is. It's the innovator's paradox. It's an outgrowth of innovator isolation. And the thing that I think is important about that is that the kinds of innovation that are needed today, it's good that they're popping up in multiple places from multiple people in multiple forms. So even if you or I or a listener to this show is innovating something that they're really excited about and then discovers that it's not the only version,
Yes.
that doesn't mean it's the end of the road. They need to get really clear about what their version brings that's different from other versions that are out there, or who their version serves that's different from who's served by other versions.
Couldn't agree more, David. Absolutely. I think you said that really well.
Oh, thank you. And so you and I are both finding that conventional ways of doing business are actually turning off more team members, employees, outsourcers, freelancers, etc., turning off more team members than ever. And say a little bit more about, well, actually, we may not have time for you to do that in this segment. I just realized we're running down on time, so I think I'll just move into wrap up for this segment
Great.
instead. So the rest of this episode dives into the root causes of what Paul and I just discussed, what to look for in a solution, and Paul's version of that solution. After a short break, my marvelous guest, social entrepreneur expert Paul Zelizer and I will explore less recognized reasons behind why too many team members are so disengaged and too many businesses are so deranged. So we'll be back. I'm Dr. David Gruder. This is the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and we will be back momentarily. Welcome back. Before the break, my guest, Paul Zelizer, told us about problems he's discovered that kill purpose, passion, and engagement in team members and thus in business success. And in this segment, as you already know, we'll delve into under-recognized root causes of team member dissatisfaction, disengagement, and stress, and social entrepreneur stuckness as well. So, Paul, what are some of the most overlooked root causes of these symptoms that you've found?
It's a great question, David. I want to sort things into maybe two buckets. One would be in a larger, medium-sized and up established business, something that's been around for a while. And then we're talking about some of the dynamics that you were describing, which is workplace disengagement, and tension between leadership and frontline people. And then we'll talk about what's going on in the entrepreneur bucket, because they're very, very different. They're very different scenarios, and there's some overlap, but there's also very significant differences.
Love it.
So in the more established business, whether it's, I'm thinking of a restaurant chain here in Albuquerque, and I know the owner, and 10 or 12 locations, or a software business, or whatever the business is. When we're up and running and it's been going for a while, what we're hearing is there's a lot of tension between frontline workers and leadership. And that can be from a number of different fronts. Some of it is economic. We've seen stagnant wage growth for frontline workers, and the cost of living keeps going up at the same time that people at the top, not in every company, but in most companies, we're seeing CEO pay is orders of magnitude more than it was 20 or 50 years ago, where frontline people have been seen very stagnant and the cost of living keeps going up. So some of that tension's economic. Some of it is a feeling of disrespect, that a lot of people are just feeling like they go to work and their leaders they don't know them. Sometimes they're being very unrealistic in the expectations, again, from the frontline person's perspective. And there's a tension there between just a respect and also workload that's being asked. And a lot of folks are feeling that. And many people in larger companies, at least in the circles I move, my guess is on this show, the listeners just feel a general sense of what's the purpose of doing this thing? And a tension between trying to optimize for income as a person who's living in an expensive world and feeling drawn to making a difference in some way, shape, or form. And so those are just a few of the main ones that I personally heard, but also have heard research in those more established companies. In the entrepreneur world,
before we go to the entrepreneur one, let me just anchor what you've said first for our audience. And I totally agree with you. I mean, there's tension between frontline workers and leadership. In fact, the day that we're doing this episode, I just saw a story of how a whole bunch of people in Starbucks have gone on strike because they don't like the new dress code that Starbucks has instituted. So there's this tension between frontline workers and leadership. You're so right about this stagnant wage growth in most personnel, while cost of living keeps increasing and while CEO pay is orders of magnitude higher. So the people are feeling disrespected and unseen. They feel like they're being saddled with unrealistic expectations about their workload, especially as there are more and more cuts made in the business for cost saving or efficiency purposes, or supposedly, or maybe actually, depending on the business, and a general disconnection from their own sense of purpose in terms of the role they fill in the business. So those are, I think, spot on and worth underlining before you go into this other bucket.
Great. And then I would say one that straddles both buckets is AI. AI is changing a lot of things very quickly. Some businesses are seeing, some sectors are seeing it more than others right now, but it's changing many people's experience of going to work and what their interactions were with their coworkers, with customers, etc. So that's another layer, and that's changing many things very, very quickly.
Absolutely.
So that's a whole other podcast, and we could talk about that a little more, but just want to say that I add a tense situation that's been going on, pretty robustly for at least 5 years and even a decade, but then you add AI and that's accelerating some of these tensions or adding fuel to some of these.
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. Oh, not so beautiful, but beautifully said.
If you ask me about the problem, I'm a pretty straightforward. I'm going to try to outline this. But I got solutions that I have crowdsourced from some of the smartest people in the world. But if we're going to try to understand the problem, I think we have to pay attention to at least those factors. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. There's an old saying, treatment without diagnosis is malpractice. So we're outlining what the problems are that need a solution so that we can then go into what to look for in a solution in the next segment. So go to the other bucket now.
In the entrepreneur bucket, what's happening is, some because we didn't talk about this, some because of demographics. So a lot of people age 45 and up, 50 and up are finding it difficult to stay employed. Certain demographics, this cost cutting and letting go of people is not equally distributed. I just saw a research study where Black women in the US had lost a whole percentage point in the entire workforce. They went from 5% unemployed to 6% employed in 1 month, the month of April of 2025. So if you're older or you're from an underrepresented community, the chances are you might be experiencing difficulty even getting a job. So some people are coming to entrepreneurship from a financial return perspective. Some people are coming because they're aging out of what the workforce is supporting, and that's really unfortunate. And some people having difficulty because of the community they come from, having viable opportunities to make a good living, especially when cost keeps rising. So there's more people looking at entrepreneurship, some from a passion and impact flavor, and some from the results of what's happening in the larger economy. So there's a lot happening in the entrepreneur world, but the funding to get something up and running, we've already discussed, is down. My best guess is at least half as it was 2 years ago. Again, AI is changing things. It's making it easier. I talked to somebody the other day at a startup event here in Albuquerque, and he said, I had, those scheduling things, you and I probably both have one, David, you can give somebody a link and they can get on your calendar. He's like, I had an idea for a better one. I put it into AI, an hour and a half later, I had a better one. So it's just making it easier to innovate from a technical, but it also is making more noise. There's a lot happening in the entrepreneur, and it's all kind of live in real time and a little bit messy, to be honest. So trying to make sense of that, if you're on the earlier stage of the entrepreneurial journey, it's more, there's just more factors and more moving parts than there were a few years ago in an ecosystem where there's less funding. So not super easy set of circumstances to navigate. Again, I think having an impact and making a difference thesis makes that all easier. We're going to get to that. But again, I want to be really honest about some of the issues that we're seeing in each of these buckets.
Yes. Spot on again, because there seems to me, and it sounds like between the lines, it also seems to you that more and more people in the 45 to 50 and older group and in the underrepresented groups in our society are feeling almost forced to become entrepreneurs or socialpreneurs or to go out on their own in order to deal with being phased out, finding that it's more and more difficult to stay employed. And what you're saying is that what makes that difficult is not only that people who are trained to be employees aren't trained to be entrepreneurs, so they've got a new skill set to learn, but also with funding being harder to acquire, bootstrapping is more important than ever. And knowing how to effectively bootstrap is a skill set in and of itself inside of understanding entrepreneurship or socialpreneurship. And to tie that back in with what you were saying earlier about AI, AI can help this transition into entrepreneurship or socialpreneurship happen, but only if they know how to use it well for these purposes.
Very well said, David. Yeah, and I'll just give a very quick story. Somebody I know, I'm pretty involved in the ecosystem here in Albuquerque, and somebody I know worked for one of the government agencies. We've been hearing about federal government agencies letting people off, got let off, was in marketing, and got laid off, or I think she took the opportunity to leave, an incentivized opportunity. She took that because she thought she was going to get laid off, but they first gave everybody a chance. She took it, and now she's using her marketing skills, which is what she was doing for the federal government, to launch her, it's time. This is a nudge from the universe to launch this business. So hundreds of thousands of people from the federal government alone that have been laid off in the past 5 months, and a lot of them are smart, and they're looking at their skill sets and how do I leverage. So that's just one example of many, and I couldn't agree more. AI can help or hinder depending on how wise you are about using it, but it's showing up almost everywhere right now. So it being smart about it and paying attention is really, really important.
Right. And I for our audience, I'm also going to add something that I've often stressed on this show, which is technology is neutral. AI is technology. It itself is neutral. In the hands of some human beings, it's used for ill. It's used for sinister motives. It does harm. In the hands of other individuals, it does massive good. And so the issue, as you're implying, and I want to underscore, is not AI. The issue is how to use it well, and especially in service of socialpreneurial kinds of objectives.
I think smart people have an opportunity to use a lean mindset because of AI and have much more impact on a much, whatever your resources are, time, energy, and money, whether it's a full-time venture or a part-time venture. If you're smart about learning from what's out there, using AI, building certain strategic partnerships. I'm getting into the solution, David. Maybe you can tell me if I'm getting too far ahead of myself.
That in a moment. I need to wrap up this particular segment first.
Got it.
So after another short break, we will get to the heart of the matter, what to look for in a solution that gets team members and the entrepreneurs or socialpreneurs that are building those team members passionately engaged through the wisdom that socialpreneurship brings to business success. I'm Dr. David Gruder. This is the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Your show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and we'll continue momentarily. And we're back. Before the break, my pioneering guest in socialpreneur success, Paul Zelizer, and I delved into less recognized but vitally important root causes of stress and disengagement and struggles in the workplace. And as I mentioned, in this segment, we'll unpack ingredients that solve those root causes so that everyone becomes more fully, passionately, and productively engaged than ever before. So, Paul, what wisdom can you offer to business owners and executives and workers wanting to make passion, purpose, and integrity profitable? And in the next segment, we'll get into your version of that solution. But in this segment, I just want you to outline what people should be looking for in a solution.
Great. Thanks for that question, David. I think the first thing I would encourage people, whatever the size and wherever you are on your business journey, is to understand the depth of the hunger. And what I mean by that is, if you look around the world, when I started in 2008, most people didn't know what social entrepreneurship was. here in 2025, it's one of the fastest growing majors on college campuses around the world. I'll give you a local example of that. Again, I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The University of New Mexico, our business school here, launched a business for good concentration, 4 courses in the MBA program here in Albuquerque. And that's a trend we're seeing across the world. Young people are looking at our world and some of the challenges in it and have some concerns about government and nonprofit. Not that those are bad career paths, but I'm just giving you the data. This is what they tell us. They want to have the innovation and the strengths of for-profit business, but they want to learn how to use that lever to use the University of New Mexico business for good. And to get ahead of that trend, if you run crosswinds of that trend, I wouldn't encourage that. I always try to pay attention to what is actually going on in the marketplace. And this is a trend I've certainly been seeing, but I am just one person who's reporting this, and there's a lot of data such that we're seeing these kind of programs. So the hunger in most cases, especially for the listeners of a show like this, is there. And you can use that as leverage to start conversations wherever you are. You're the CEO of a 20,000 person company. Great. Now you have the data, and now let's talk about what to do with it. If you're a single person startup and you're the founder and you're just getting started in your solo, again, let's get ahead of that trend and understand the marketplace. So that's my first suggestion. Understand how big this hunger is and don't get caught flat-footed here.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And just to underscore that, there's been a really dramatic change in consumer demand over the decades. And in the late 2010s, according to the research and scholarly writing in branding and marketing and advertising, we moved into something that they call the transformation economy, where people are looking for transformative experiences with the products and services that they buy, or with the for-purpose organizations that they affiliate with. And so that's an important part of understanding the marketplace and what's fueling this explosion of new majors concentrations in programs like MBA programs around businesses doing good. So that's huge. So that's one thing to look for in a solution, is help with understanding the marketplace as it is now and as it's moving toward.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, David.
What else should they be looking for?
So then getting proactive, I'm always a favor of getting on the front foot as opposed to being on the back foot. So again, wherever you are in an organizational hierarchy, when it comes to a business, 20,000 person CEO, 1 person founder, or frontline worker at Starbucks, let's try to understand where your company is in relationship to that market trend. Some companies are going to be further along the line. Classics like Patagonia might be an example that many people are familiar with, or Ben & Jerry's or whatever. And other companies, it's been less attended to. To learn how to make the business case for social entrepreneurship, right? Or at least values-based business, or whatever you want to call it, purpose-based business, somehow understanding that having more than a single bottom line approach to business is good for business. Let me say that again. Having a values or purpose-based business is good for business outcomes, especially over the long haul. So being fluent in that conversation, and I actually just recently interviewed somebody about that. We can talk more about that interview, but getting really good at the business case. This isn't do-goodism. This is creating sustainable business that can navigate these very turbulent times we're in with a much higher degree of success and profitability. If you can make that case, you're going to have many more options, and you're going to probably be more happy with what your career looks like. Again, wherever you wind up and whichever path you choose. And somebody who is approaching this as, we should do good, but it costs more, that's not a current mindset. And that's a very tough sell in this economy.
So another ingredient to look for in a solution is help with knowing how to make the case for being values and purpose driven in your entrepreneurship or in your business, no matter, as you said, no matter whether you're a frontline worker or a freelancer or stepping into socialpreneurship, where it doesn't matter, identifying what's distinctive about you. Why would I choose you over other options that are out there?
Yes.
And so that is another important ingredient in the kind of help to look for in succeeding.
Absolutely.
What are some other ingredients?
Another ingredient is to really understand your market, or if you don't yet understand it, to do what we would call social listening, to do some market research. I see especially more purpose-oriented people jump quickly to a product or a service as the solution, and to not really understand whether their targeted customers really want that thing. They may care about how you're trying to make a difference, but the way you're going about creating a business around it or a social enterprise around it just might be setting you up for a lot of friction and a lot of pain. So make sure that if you are moving in a different direction or you're bringing something new and innovative out, let's make sure that it actually works as a product or a service. And I like to use my two hands. This is what your customer or your market wants, and this is what you're bringing. The better we get these two things to sync up, the less friction that is, we're going to get more mileage. We're going to just have a much more beneficial experience, more profitable, etc. And I see a lot of people who have a purpose or a values-based approach rush this part. And then they're constant for the rest of time they are in that role or with that business or in that startup, they're kind of doing this, and that's a painful journey.
Yes. I think we can't stress that enough, that a solution has to help the entrepreneur or the established business for that purpose, for that reason as well, to get really good at what I call purpose market matchmaking.
Yes.
And that intersection of what I'm called to bring to the world and what the portions of the marketplace, what my target market is seeking inside of what I'm called to bring to the world. Finding that matchmaking is absolutely crucial. And you and I have seen so many, wonderful, well-intended visionaries knowing they're ahead of the marketplace. It's like they know what the market should want, but they haven't discovered that what the market should want is not what the market is ready to want now.
Absolutely, David. And I can tell a story about this. We have a program here in New Mexico again that is called the Entrepreneurs in Development. Took 6 highly promising young people in the business school on an undergraduate basis and invited them in, paid them to do a 6-month, very deep dive, half time. They actually extended it to 8-month program. And this was all about building muscles for better entrepreneurial results, some of our best next generation talent. In that 6-month program, the first 3 months, the majority, like I'm talking 80 to 90% of what they were doing was market research. And a lot of it was social listening. They used Reddit, kind of questions and answer site, because it's real humans going to a place that they're motivated enough trying to get information that's not filtered through an algorithm. I'm not saying Reddit's the only way to do this, but it's an example. 50% of the program was about really dialing in and understanding the nuances. So I've been using that example a lot. I know a lot of those young people, they're doing great, and they're coming out of the gate as 23-year-olds with startups. They were invited to, turn that idea into something real. And most of those 6 have, and I am mentoring and in relationship with them. They're coming out of the gate with incredible traction, unlike the vast majority of startups I've seen, because they dug deeper at the front end of understanding the problem, kind of like what you did here, David, at the beginning of our interview, with a level of care and nuance that's really, really uncommon. And they're getting results that people twice their age and sometimes with a lot more money and experience are like scratching their head saying, how did they do that?
Yes. And what I'll underscore about that wonderful example is even though there's less funding and there's more hesitancy, there still is funding, and the funding that exists goes somewhere. And what we're describing is where the funding goes. It goes to those who have really started to master the mindsets and skill sets of socialpreneurship and social listening and lean bootstrapping and use of AI and things along those lines, and who know how to construct an effective business plan that makes them funding attractive. There's a big difference between being funding ready and funding attractive. And
Absolutely.
you're talking about funding attractiveness. So after our upcoming break, we'll return for our episode's final segment, during which I'll be asking Paul to reveal how he helps social entrepreneurs and their team members thrive, his version of the solution we were just discussing. So I'm Dr. David Gruder. This is the Reimagining Humanity's Future in Your show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and we'll return shortly. Well, before the break, socialpreneur success sorcerer, I just gave you a new title.
I didn't know that was my title. Okay.
Socialpreneur success sorcerer Paul Zelizer and I discussed ingredients to look for when you want to love your work and love what your company or you provide. And you also want to help your team members stay passionately and purposefully engaged. As I already mentioned during the final segment of this episode called Reimagining Social Entrepreneurship, Aligning Values with Profits to Help People Thrive, Paul's going to tell us how he does what we suggested in the last segment that you look for. I'll then let you know the best way to start accessing Paul's great wisdom. After that, Paul and I will each share the big takeaway we hope you've gained from this episode, followed by my closing comments. So, Paul, how do you help businesses and their personnel thrive by shifting into the most updated version of socialpreneurship?
Well, two of my superpowers, David, is one, I'm passionate about not reinventing the wheel. It sounds really simple, but as a result of those passions, I've made certain decisions, and this will come out later, but I'll talk about my podcast a little bit now. So I have the longest running social entrepreneur podcast in the world. And I've had the incredible honor. I am so grateful that really smart, dedicated social entrepreneurs who have built things at scale, some of the best known brands in the impact business world on the planet, have spent time with me like you're spending time with me. David's going to be one of them, hint, hint, and hopefully you'll put the link to your episode, David.
Yeah.
So, people like David, folks who've created things who've at incredible scale. And I've been asking them since 2008, would they share with me about how they got their results? So there's a very big difference between studying something in a book or at a business school, which is all great, and asking real live entrepreneurs how they've done it at scale. And that's part of the reason I started the podcast, is very knowledgeable people were sharing with me, and I wanted to make that available. So number one is I've just had a passion not to reinvent the wheel and learn from others and see where there might be some application of either a project I'm working on or a client is working on, and how we can repurpose or just learn from what's out there that's working. It's appreciative inquiry 101. The two basic questions of appreciative inquiry are what's going well and what do we want to do more of, as it was taught to me. So I just got really passionate about that in very specific sector, social entrepreneurship, because one of the things we also know is that what happens that as positioned as effective in the larger business world doesn't always translate into an impact brand one-to-one. So I got really focused on what are leading impact brands doing in the world of business, starting in 2008. So I'd have to be kind of dumb not to learn anything. I can be a little stubborn, but I'm not that dumb. Number two is, people oftentimes describe me as a super connector. David, you and I met because we know Rachel, big shout out to you.
Hi, Rachel.
Somebody put us in touch, right? That's a super common experience in my life, right? I care about relationships. I cultivate a network. As people come to understand the work I do, it means when a client is looking for funding, I can personally reach out to VCs when it feels like a fit. That literally happened this morning. It also happened yesterday, and I think it happened the day before as well. That's not an uncommon, but it's not just about funding, it's talent. I make referrals to clients who hire me of folks who I think would be a good fit. It's helping people who are, coming up with their ideas as an early stage. Which business model? This morning I did a session on, was a B2C or B2B business model, business to customer, business to business, which is a better business model for this individual. And I could give her 3 or 4 examples that were very closely, it wasn't exact, but they were pretty closely aligned. And that gave her choice with an informed way. Hey, go listen to these podcast episodes. If you're interested, I still know those folks, and we can get some data about the choices they made when they were right where you are on the journey. That means I can oftentimes help reduce the learning curve and the suffering curve for my clients.
That's beautiful. I love both of those superpowers of yours. The passion about not reinventing the wheel that's translated into your podcast, which I'm going to say a couple things about in a few minutes, and your other superpower around reach outs and networking. And what I want to say for anyone who's tuned in who doesn't know what VC is, that's venture capitalist.
Oh,
And
sorry. Yeah.
no problem. That's why I'm here. And what I want to differentiate in that world is you're not talking about vulture capitalists, and you're not even talking about conventional non-vulture VCs. You're talking about impact-oriented venture
Yes.
capitalists.
Yeah, the introduction I made, there's some great folks at Montauk Climate. It was a climate-focused VC venture capital firm, and it's a clean tech company that I know and know the CEO and have known for a long time. And I've been getting to know them. They're a sponsor of an event we're doing, and there's a lot of values alignment. And yes, this is not Shark Tank, although it's fun to watch Shark Tank. This is values aligned, impact oriented. Another referral I made is called the Indigenous Futures Fund. It's an impact-focused loan fund for Native founders who want to scale their businesses. So those are just 2 very recent examples of knowing that they're there, and it looks familiar on what they're either investing for equity or making a loan. It looks very familiar, but the people doing it are values forward. And they also have to check certain boxes as venture capital firms and or as loan making entities, but their values is first.
Marvelous. So what you do is your version of the solution that we unpacked in the last segment about what people would be wise to look for. And you do that because you're always at the forefront of understanding what's working and what's not, because of who you interview in your podcast and other research that you track. And because you're so well connected into the impact-oriented funding world, you're able to hook the right people, the right clients of yours up with the right potential funding sources at the right time when they're actually ready to have conversations with those funding sources. So that's huge.
Yeah, not everybody. A lot of people think entrepreneurship, the biggest issue or stumbling block is capital, is money, and that's not true. Is the general consensus, especially in this economy. having a strong understanding of your target client, having a really solid business model. That actually makes it easier to get funding when it's time. But if you get the funding and you don't have some of these other things in place, you're wasting your time and other people's money, which it happens, but that's not the desired outcome.
No, it's not. So your Awarepreneurs podcast is an award-winning podcast that's the longest running social entrepreneur podcast in the world, with over 360 episodes as we record this episode today. One of which, as you mentioned, I guested for, and its purpose is to help you simultaneously supercharge your positive impact, profitability, and quality of life rather than sacrificing one for the other, whether as a business board member or owner or executive or team member. And the link to that is simply awarepreneurs.com. So AWAREPRENEURS, like entrepreneur, awarepreneurs.com. Paul, what do you hope our audience has gained from this episode? In just one brief non-run-on sentence, what's the big takeaway?
We spend the majority of our waking hours in the modern world at work, and to work with purpose and having impact is one of the most life-affirming things I could ever imagine a human experience right now.
Beautiful. And what I would say is my takeaway is that the age of what I've long referred to as sociopathic capitalism is long over, even though some are still pretending it's not. And social entrepreneurship makes purpose, passion, and integrity profitable. That's a win for investors, owners, personnel, consumers, and humanity, instead of some of these groups winning at the expense of others losing. So again, be sure to tune in to Paul's Awarepreneurs show at awarepreneurs.com. Thank you so very much, Paul, for bringing your wisdom to so many and for being on my show. Do you have any final comments before I do my wrap up?
Just thanks for what you do, David, for holding conversations like this and to be thinking about transformation in a time when there's a lot of suffering. I want to honor you and thank you for having me.
Well, it was truly a pleasure. And thank you for all that you're doing in the world. And thank you all for joining me and for Paul for this episode of Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. This has been Dr. David Gruder, the polymath of human potential and societal psychotherapist who equips leading-edge leaders, influencers, and you with transcendent ideals, values, principles, mindsets, and skills for co-creating humanity's most spiritually elevated future. I invite you to explore my main website, drgruder.com. That's drgruder.com, where you'll find a link to watch or listen to all of this show's episodes, as well as a link to the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty, which is helping to dissolve divisiveness by reuniting people, nations, and humanity so we can at last usher in the age of spiritual self-sovereignty that serves us all, as I refer to it. And I'm really delighted, Paul, that you're doing your appointed part in helping that happen for all of us. The world needs you. Your nation needs you. Your loved ones need you. You need you. Boost your impact in helping the future you most want to emerge in your unique ways. I enthusiastically invite you to tune in next time for another spellbusting, uplifting, and actionable episode on how together we can and will build a better future for ourselves and for humanity. Again, Paul, thank you so much for being with me, and thank you so much for all that you're doing to help the world be a better place.
Thanks, David.